are you going to the meeting with Lego? They've been very excited. They like Lego like no other brand. I asked my son last night, I said, why is it that you like Lego? He said, well, it's because I can build fun things with it. And yeah, that kind of makes sense. But really, there is nothing else that, and he has lots of toys, lots of electronics. But with Lego, he's able to build stuff. Lego is the most profitable toy company. I read an article about this just a couple weeks ago. And actually, just a couple of weeks ago, the Washington Post had an article about how it's the most innovative company in the world. It's the third largest toy company, so it's not second.
Keep it clean.
At the time of print, I guess, or the data they had it's the third largest. The point was that number one was Mattel. Number two was Hasbro. And actually, those are two companies that I'm familiar with. Both of them had made investments in BPM. Both of them have pretty strong architecture programs. And they have sizable revenue. They're US-based. But they're not nearly as profitable as Lego today. And if you look at the growth trajectory, which I think that's going to show us some figures on that, the growth of Lego is staggering. 400% in the last 5 years. With a product, think about the product difference. And this is one of the interesting things with Hasbro. All of them are going through a transformation. Hasbro now is very focused on multiple channels. They're in a business that is defined largely around their media relationships. But where the toy model was to license and sell toys around characters from media. Lego, while it has a similar media strategy, for a two-dimensional, not particularly animate block, movies being made about these blocks, these blocks being brought to life, relationships that my children's peers have with these blocks, very different than capitalizing on somebody else's image and IP. So how does a company like that do that? It's clearly it's innovation. Clearly there's process behind it. We know why. We know the metrics around why Lego is such an innovative company, but really, I never knew how they got it. Who's read the case study on this? This is what led to the Gartner Award. Quite a few. Well, this will be better than the case study for sure. But the case study is quite a good read. If you haven't read it, I would suggest doing so. But what we're going to learn is how Lego got to be such an innovative company. So, Annette.
Thank you. Yes, and that's that one. Is it on and off?
I will turn this one. Happens to be my view.
Thank you. We'll see if this works. I will start out just showing this one, which actually, as Nathaniel was saying, we have been growing a lot. But our BPM journey actually started back in 2005-06, where it didn't go very well at Lego. We had actually, we were not close to being sold because we are a family-owned company, but we really didn't have a good profit or anything. So what happened in 2003 and 2004 was actually that cost reduction, so a lot of people were fired. And every month, the last Thursday of every month, it was a firing round. And every month we looked at colleagues walking out the door, taking a lot of knowledge with them. So actually there was a smart guy in IT saying, this is not good. A lot of knowledge walks out the door every month. We need to do something. So being in IT did what they are best at. They got an IT tool. And then suddenly we had a BPM journey starting up at Lego. But it was actually quite challenging what we with this new tool and the approach taken. So I'll just move to this one. So we started out in 2006. Is this not good?
No, it's fine.
It's fine, okay. So we started out and we had this IT tool, so suddenly we had an IT project. And they were struggling a lot in this IT project because they came to the business saying, we want to implement this tool, and the business was saying, yeah, but why? And they really couldn't get a nice answer for that. And they, being part of the enterprise architecture, they said, we really don't want to involve business a lot in trying to set up this tool in the beginning, because we know all about the business processes, so we will figure out how to use it. And then they started up using it, and they said, okay, what is the most complex process we have in the company? Oh, that might be the order to cash process. It goes across, it's really an end-to-end process. It goes across countries and whatnot. A lot of people, a lot of new people coming in and out in customer service and whatnot. So if we can solve this one, then we can solve all of it. So the pilot for using this IT tool was actually the order to cash process, but also starting out with the highest complexity. So really, we set ourselves up for failure instead of success. So after a year or so, with now it's switching.
Put it over your head.
Over your shoulder. Seem to work better.
Your
It worked for Henry.
There you go.
There you go.
Ah.
You know, you look at that.
We'll see if it works.
Oh.
So after a year or so, we had this humongous documentation, but business didn't know anything about it. And then when we went into business, they said, yeah, right, we really recognize this. And we went into other areas of the business than just the order to cash. And said, we did this and tried to use it as a showcase. And they said, yeah, right. We really don't have time for it. And the list of excuses was really that long. And then in around 2009, unfortunately, I have not been there from the beginning. In 2009, I happened to take over the process documentation team, it was called. And I said to this guy who was heading up process documentation, coming to me saying, couldn't I just be part of your team? I had the enterprise architects reporting to me and said, yeah, maybe, but you know, this process documentation, I really don't believe in it. So, so we made the deal that he would be responsible for process documentation, and I would just do the people management. Great deal, I thought. Then everybody was happy. But then it only took 1 month before he contacted me and he said, we are hosting this Irish User Group Nordic conference, one-day thing. Could you come and tell us something? And I was just, yeah. But this was really not my job, but I said, yeah, fine, I'll do it. Do we have any material? Yes, we have. I'll send it to you. Fine, that was easy, I thought. So then I received this 50 pages PowerPoint. Nothing wrong with that, you know, except that in it, it had all the Irish functionality described. And then, you know, when I really looked into it, I could find maybe 1 or 2 pages describing, so what are we going to use it for? And there I really realized that, okay, maybe now I know why the business don't adopt this tool, because we really communicate in a totally wrong way to the business. So this is the early 2009. Then later on that year, in the enterprise architecture function, I had this experience. A lot of really smart guys were in there, and they often, you know, came back after having had discussions with the business, saying business really don't have a clue of what we're talking about. And why can't we persuade them to do this and this and this, and why can't they see that they need to do this and this and this? And I thought, well, maybe this is not about all the tools we are having or how we use them. Maybe this is a communication issue. So do we actually communicate the right way to the business? So I had one consultant who were leaving to another department, and then I got this open position, and I went into my boss saying, this open position, I would like to use it for a communication consultant. And he was, you know, him being enterprise architecture kind of guy, really high specialized. A communication consultant, we normally, you know, have the true specialists in here. And I said, yes, but the experience is that this is not only about knowing all the right stuff, it's also how you are able to communicate to the business. And we talked forth and back, and then we actually happened to hire in a communication consultant. Then we also agreed that being an enterprise architecture, we had all the right knowledge about Lego. It was people who were chosen coming out of 2 SAP implementations, so they knew really end to end how Lego was working. So maybe it was not, you know, their professional skills we were going to build, but maybe more their soft skills. So we set up a change management 2-day seminar, hired in some consultants to tell us something about the change management. And those consultants said to us in the leadership team, they said, so you will need to bring cases from your own life to work with during this seminar. Fine, and I was, you know, having all the enterprise architects working on all, I don't know, 80 different projects or something, and I was just, so what case am I going to take where I can actually get all of them to work around the same case? And I thought, process documentation, that is something they are all involved in, they should be involved in, we'll use that. So during these 2 days, we all got this aha moment where we said, oh, now we know why we couldn't implement ARIS, because we actually need to speak about process documentation instead. So using all these change management tools actually made everybody realize that we were set off in the wrong direction. So we went back, spent 2 days, and I'll show you what came out of those 2 days where everybody got aligned. We actually knew all of it, we just never put words to it. So, and I will show you that. So that's the focus on the why up there. So actually go out to business and tell them, so why are we doing this? What is it we are trying to accomplish? After that, it became pretty easy. We also got a CFO who was coming from 17 years in Germany, Ordnung muss sein, kind of. So he called me in and my boss in, and he said, this process documentation, I can hear somebody have been working on it. Why isn't it in place? And we, yeah, we actually just recently found out. And he said, but you know, to me it's a no-brainer. Of course, we need to have documented processes, so go do. And I was, you know, saying, so what's the scope? Are we just talking finance, you being the CFO, or? No, all of the company. So that was the easy part, you know. I didn't need to discuss with business whether they should do that process documentation. We could discuss when and how, but we didn't have to discuss if we should do it. So, but having that top management commitment, we actually have 3 out of 5 in our corporate management executive highest level who was supporting this and who was also willing to stand up for it. And, you know, openly supported in the organization. That made it so much easier. So what we actually did, we made a turnaround at that, or we changed the approach at that point in time. So I said to him, we'll do it. We'll go do and fix this documentation problem. But I need somebody to do it. Up until that point, the saying was, or I have been told that show me some results, then you will get some results. Now it turned the other way around, and I said, I need some resources to be able to show you some results, and I got them. So I went into the market in Denmark and hired in some of the best process mapping experts I could find. Found a put on a researcher to find the best, and then I hired in just a small team of 4 consultants. And that really worked. Then we set up internally in all business areas, we appointed process consultants who would work with this process documentation over the next year for that business area or for that set of processes. And then all the training was done by the 4 consultants I have in the central team, small centralized team, and then they are training the full organization. So now we have a community of around 25-30 where we actually train them internally. But that actually works, so business owns the documentation. We do not own anything in my team. It's business owning the documentation. And then another thing we did was we started focusing on the users. When I started working with this, not believing in it in 2009, I started these discussions with business. They said, but why are you doing it like that? Why can't we have our swim lanes like we are used to? And I went back to the small documentation team and I said, so why don't we have swim lanes? Because I really didn't have a good argument for not having swim lanes. And they said, but the standard of the tool is not to have swim lanes. And I thought, yeah, but is that really a good argument? It's really not, because documentation in itself is not that sexy, so you need to do something to make the game just a bit more sexy. So now this starts again. I need to stand still. So we started focusing on the users. We started focusing on our way of modeling processes. Luckily, these process experts or process mapping experts that I hired into my team were really experienced, and they said, so why are you doing it this way? Why don't you use BPMN? And being in an Aries world, using BPMN was really, at that time, pretty not common, you could say. That was everybody looking at us and saying, so what are you doing? But we decided to use BPMN and started off redoing all what was already in there. And that actually made a difference because now they got their swim lanes. We also worked on the tools and the user interface of the tool to make it just a little more eye-catchy than it was. And then suddenly, people started saying, okay, now I understand why we are doing this. Now I also can see how we will get there. So now it actually starts to make sense to me. I can also use it. I can actually use this tool for something, and I actually also find it valuable. So from it really being an uphill battle all of 2009, the majority of 2010, it actually started paying off late 10, beginning of 11. And what we did was that I had this small documentation team, and we actually went out to the business. I actually gave a promise to executive management that was really maybe a bit too big or too ambitious. We were only myself and one more at that time. This is end of March 2010, and they said to me, so where are we? How do we get this really going in the organization? And I said, but it's not going, and I need your support, and da 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 da. And then our CFO and one of the other executive management members said, but you know what? We have a business planning process going on right now. It will close beginning of June 10th. We will close that, and we would like you to go and build it into the business plans in all areas, a process documentation initiative. What would that take? And I said, well, if we are to come with some estimates on this, we actually need to identify which processes we have in this company. Okay, you go do that. And I said, I'll do that. So we had these 3 months where we needed to identify what I will show you all our level 1 to 4. of our processes, so not the swim lane level, but everything above, to be able to actually do some kind of estimation of, so how big an effort would this be. And I came back to my colleague saying, I have been into the executive management, and by the way, I promised them that we would identify all processes and make a plan and estimate and whatnot by June 10. And he just turned on his table and said, can I just get that one more time? What have you promised? And I said, yeah, maybe it's a bit ambitious. So how will we do this? And then it came that I said, but there must be something. There must be a standard out there that we can use. And then we looked into different standards, and we took the APQC standard off the shelf, and then I said, we'll use it as far as we can. So we invited ourselves in all business areas. We looked at the APQC framework, said, okay, these are the processes. So we will invite people in from the management level in the business and do a workshop and identify, so which processes do we have here? How far is this valid, and where are we going to build something ourselves? And that was actually what was pretty interesting when I got connected to Mark and Henrik a little more than a year ago, where they said, we would like to hear your story of what is it you have done and all that. And then I said to Mark and Henrik, couldn't you come by and tell us why is it interesting to have our case story in your BPM book? And they came, and together with my team, they couldn't actually show us any of the stuff from the BPM book, but they showed one diagram. And we could, almost 95%, we could have written it if they said, tell us what you did. And it was, you take a standard framework, you use it as far as you can. If it doesn't fit, then you use the management layer actually to build what is missing. And then there was something, I never got a copy of it, unfortunately, so I can't remember what was in the bottom of it, but there was one or two activities that we didn't do. But that was actually why the Lego story is interesting. Unfortunately, we didn't know of the leading practice at that time. Then we would just have looked and seen, so what are the leading practice doing? So this was maybe more by coincidence that we did the right stuff here. But that is why it's interesting in the leading practice connection, is that the leading practice actually say use a standard framework independently of its being able to see or score or whatever, but use standard framework as far as you can, and then build the rest yourself. And that we did. And that made us where we are today. I will show you a little bit of so what was it we did at this 2-day seminar for the change management. What is the story we are telling to the business? And we have been, I have to say, we have been a no PowerPoint project. So this post, I say poster because for us it's a poster. We have put it up on a big cardboard, and we traveled around in the organization with it, together with the pyramid here.
Yeah.
This is not my best friend. But,
it's okay. I think you're good. Yeah.
So I don't know if you can read it up in the back, otherwise I will explain it. This was actually what came out of it. So what is it we are trying to accomplish when we say we want to document our processes? Why do we want to do it? First of all, we want to capture knowledge. You know, put a little USB stick into people's head and out with all the knowledge, put it into the PC, so we're actually able to share it. Actually coming out of the bit reactive thinking my boss had when he said a lot of knowledge walks out the door every month. You know, that is just one of the things we want to accomplish. Then, in the meantime, from that reactive thinking back in 2005-06, actually Lego have grown a lot. Now we have a revenue that is way, way higher. And here in 2009, 2010, we could foresee that with the growth we are having, we're actually going to take in a lot of new people. And in 2007, kind of, we were just above 4,000 people in the company. I think the figures from the annual report last week tell us that we are now 12,000 people. So over just not that many years, we have grown a lot. And how do you take in so many new people in a company where you don't know how you work? Or you know, but you're really not able to share it in a structured way. So that is why the second reason is that we want to share knowledge in a more structured way. We want to capture our way of working, and then we want to share it in a structured way. And then, of course, as it goes for everybody, the cost optimization or the optimization purposes that you can't optimize anything where you don't know how you do it today. So to make the as-is, to be able to go into the to-be, we also want it. And that is why it's drawn as actually process documentation describing the as-is processes is an enabler for continuous improvement. So around the same time, next to the process documentation project, a continuous improvement program was started up in the administration areas. We already had it 5 years earlier, something in the manufacturing area, but in the administration area, it was also started up more or less at the same time. So this is actually the 3 things we want to accomplish by documenting our processes, capturing the knowledge, to keep it in the company, be able to share it in a more structured way, and then create this foundation for process optimization. So what was, and partly still is, the as-is situation in Lego? These small minifigures down here. That is actually the way we transfer knowledge in the company. We say, well, welcome, Peter. You can sit here next to Tina, and then she will tell you how we work. And what happens then in this situation is that you actually inherit good and bad habits. So it's not really out of bad intention or anything, but it's because you don't know better. And you don't have a place to go to find that knowledge. So what we see and what we hear is that, you know, we say, Tina says, yeah, and by the way, you know, I have this user guide. I know it might be a couple of years old, but maybe as part of your introduction, you can, you know, update it and make it fresh. That's done, that's saved somewhere. Nobody knows it's updated. So next time another new colleague comes in and sits next to another person in the department, and they do the same exercise. And they do not actually take the advantage that is already done because nobody knows. That's a big challenge, and we see it. I can tell you, we have mapped 1,800 processes now, or a little more than 1,800. And it's really funny, or maybe it's not funny, it's actually also a bit sad, but when we go out and we invite a set of production planners, set of order managers across countries, and we put them into a room and say, so how do you work? What is your processes? And we put them, of course, together with whoever is a stakeholder in the process, and we say, so how do we work? And then not sitting next to each other or anything, day in and day out, they start saying, well, I do this, and then I take it into Excel, and then I and then I send off some kind of a report. Oh, you do? Did you know that is actually a standard report in SAP? Oh, it is. I can start doing that from tomorrow. You know, and these kinds of benefits are just everywhere. We have just seen it. People sitting next to each other, even, you know, with the desks just opposite. They have never ever spoken about how they work. You have your set of product numbers, and I have my set of product numbers. And we never speak about how we work. We just do it because I know how I am going to execute my work, so we don't need to speak about it. But when we invite them in and we get these discussions, oh, that's smart. I can start using that by tomorrow. So back in 2010, this guy who actually started it all up back in 2005, he came to me and he said, I read this Lean book, and I was, just as I was not believing in process documentation, I was not either a big Lean interest. So I said, so anything smart in that one? Yes, he said, here is our full business case for process documentation. And I was just, yeah, right. So what is it you have been reading? And he said, well, in this book, it says that just by documenting your processes, you will become 10 to 15% more effective and efficient. Yeah, I said, maybe we'll see. Now, I'm totally convinced that that's at least what you gain from just documenting your processes. There is a huge saving, there's a huge, all of these, oh, that was smart, I didn't know. And all of it being due to this from employee to employee way of transferring knowledge. So there's a huge potential in it. What also characterizes this situation where you actually transfer in a non-structured way is that you are really depending on calling a friend when there's something you don't know. So every time there's something, oh, what am I going to do here? I'll call somebody, often in IT. And when you are hugely IT supported in your processes, you call IT and say, so what is it and what should I do now and all that. So you're really dependent on somebody else. And knowing that we are a growing company, taking in a lot of new employees, sorry, but they really don't have any friends when they come because they are just starting to build up their network. It's easy for somebody, not easy, but easier for somebody like me and a lot of other colleagues who have a long history within the company. But when you are new, you really don't know who to call. So that is one of the other challenges in the assist situation. So all of that we want to get out of. We want to know how we work. We want to be able to share it. We want to know who our friends are. So what we have done is we have created this repository where we document processes, and it's really collaboration processes. So how do we collaborate across the different business functions and units and whatnot? And for all of our processes, we put in a named process owner. And in the beginning, it was really just, and for some areas, it still is a documentation owner. But we are slowly moving into them taking on the process ownership role. It takes a while just to convince them to do documentation and what is process all about, and then slowly move them into the process owner role. But in that situation, when you are new, you know who your friends are, because you can just look up the name and say, ah, I really don't get this. What is it I'm going to do? I can call the process owner and ask for more details of this process. So this is what we have been set out to do since I actually normally say 2010, not counting in the early years when we had an IT implementation instead of a process documentation project. So what we have done, this is really boring, I know. We created this pyramid together with this poster you just saw, and this pyramid. We have done all the change management in the organization. So when I say we have been a no PowerPoint project, it's really true. We have been walking around with this one and traveling, and I can tell you it's not easy to get through security. I have tried that to the US. That was a challenge. But what we have done is, I was invited into one of our executive management areas, him saying, actually being the sponsor next to our CFO, him saying, could you come and tell my leadership team about process documentation? And I was just, yes, of course. And then I was, yeah, right. And how on earth am I going to tell executives about process documentation and what it's really about? So, maybe. So I said to my communication consultant, we need to do something. This really needs to be tangible if I'm going to explain to them what the process documentation is all about. And then then she said to me, well, that's it. I said, you know, we have this coffee example. There is a coffee example that we have been using, actually breaking down how to get up in the morning kind of process. You can see it here if you are interested. No, we can see it.
Pull it farther away.
But actually saying an example that was not selecting one of the business processes in Lego, but trying to explain, so what is decomposition all about, but not using a specific process, but something that everybody can relate to. So we created Living My Life and have broken it down or decomposed it and actually tried using that. And that worked very well. So I said to her, we need to know our coffee example. And then I need to explain that we stick to APQC for the first 3 levels. And level 4 is the only one they can touch as the starting point. Oh yeah, she said. And then maybe we need to have, you know, something from logistics or something that is a Lego example. Fine, she said, I will create a cardboard pyramid for you. And I was just, cardboard pyramid. I trusted her. So I came in the office Tuesday morning, just a quarter before I had to go to this meeting, and was really curious to see what she created. And she created the pyramids, and she said, be a little bit soft when you walk with it, because it's really not dry yet. I glued it together just 10 minutes ago, so walk carefully. And I was just, yeah, right. So I had the pyramid and the big poster and my PC and whatnot, and I went into this, and I said to them, you know, guys, IT is reporting to you, so you are actually my asset testers of this pyramid. So please give me some feedback afterwards. And they were happy, so we have been using it ever since. The only thing we improved was actually that our level 1 we put at the bottom, because nobody could read it on this example, and they were really curious what it was all about. It's actually just APQC added with 2 extra process streams. So it's not, but you know, not knowing the APQC, this was really pretty new to the organization. So we have been using this one a lot together with the poster. This is just the decomposition, 4 levels, just no swim lane, just actually processes at a higher level. When we get to level 5, we have all the process activities and all that stuff, swim lane diagrams. And then to the activities, we link at level 6, business rules, user guides, IT systems, transaction codes. So for example, if you are in the order to cash process, that could be an activity saying create customer order or create sales order. Then you could actually go one step further down saying, so that's an SAP transaction code VA01, and by the way, here's the user guide, how to fill it out. So that kind of information also, so now you're working with customer orders, so what are the priorities? So business rules are linked also either to the activities or to the processes at a more overall level. So we have all of it in there, and we only need to go into one place to find all of it. And it's open to everybody, so we can look across in the company. So that's the boring side of that one. This is our level 1. For those who know APQC, they will see that until number 12 is really just more or less standard APQC. One funny thing maybe I should share with you on this one. We actually managed at the beginning. It has been changed since, because now the business has become more process mature and they really understand what is a process and all that. They didn't in the beginning. There was one area where they totally struggled with the APQC. This is not how our world looks like. That is in process stream number 2, our product development processes. They said, no, that won't go. We have one area where we still struggle with the process structure. That's in process stream number 2, where we really struggle to keep it aligned with the rest. The beauty of taking one of these independently of its APQC or whatever, but a standard process framework, is that from the beginning you actually get the level of details aligned across all business areas. And that's really the beauty of it, because it's pretty difficult to end at the same level of details. And that will help you by using one of these standard frameworks. But we still struggle in the only area where we allowed them to not use it at all. So working with processes is really not just about documentation. It's also around, at the end, business process management. This is where we started out. We had the central process consultant, my team, the 4 consultants, knowing really everything about it. We had the local process modeling experts, those being out in the business, with the central process consultant and the local process consultant. Them working together has really been a great experience. I can tell you 2 years ago, I was at our Lego office here in the US, and we had workshops all week. And we thought, well, maybe we need to give them some introduction before we are going to map all these processes. So we invited them in for this kick-off session, and they were really, if this was the table, they were really not sitting by the table. They were sitting, a meter and a half away, doing like this. And I was just, oh, this is going to be a long week. This is going to be pretty difficult. And we told them the poster and the pyramid, and we had a small game so they could understand what a process is all about, and they were pretty skeptic, I can tell you. Then Wednesday morning, in came this lovely lady, been with the company, I think, for 30 years, really a bit late. I really don't have time to be here, an hour and a half. I only have 45 minutes, and I thought, okay, but my process consultant was totally calm. So they just started up, and they started talking, and they started interviewing her, and they did some drawings, and she couldn't see what was drawn or modeled on the PC. So they were just talking, and then suddenly they just plugged in the beamer, and they said, so is this kind of your process? And she says, yes, but I actually have some add-ons to it. Maybe I could come back this afternoon and we can finalize it. And I was just, yes, we got her. And the funny thing is that she came back in the afternoon, and then she said, you know what? This was actually pretty easy. I just came in. We just talked about how I do stuff, and now you have structured it for me. I have had this task on my list for the last 3 weeks, and I haven't had a clue of how to solve it. And now you solved it for me. And all I needed was to get in here and tell you something. I just needed to put words to it, and I didn't even think of how to put words to it. You just interviewed me. And that's one of the key success factors in doing documentation. Don't push it to the business people. Don't push it to the process expert and ask them to do all the drawings. And is this gateway like this or this? They don't have a clue. Have really strong process consultants and ask them to do it. All the technical stuff, leave that for the process consultants. And the business experts, just to bring in their knowledge. And that is actually how we have gained the trust in the company that process documentation is pretty easy. Because it is, when you do it like this, you only have this community of around 25, 30 people. They are really experts in it, and the rest don't need to care about all the details. They just get it served on a plate, you could say. So that has been good. What we have done also is that, we have had a local project manager. Actually, in most instances, it turned out to be the process modeling expert because they were the one to know all about it anyway. We have created a leadership network. When you start this up, you think it's all about tools and semantics and whatnot, conventions for documentation and all that. It's really not. It's 95% change management. You need to capture the organization. You need to get their buy into it. You need to convince them. So it's really a lot about change management. And I was thinking, so how am I going to get, a business, some kind of accountability put into them? So I said all these process modeling experts that were out there locally in the business, I just like a hostess somehow took their manager and said, now you're in this, now you actually have a chance to decide something. So in here, in this leadership network, we actually decide the direction for process documentation, and you're part of it. So that way, I try to create ambassadors also at a leadership level out in the organization. So the process modeling experts, at the consultant level weren't on their own. So that's, they probably wouldn't like if I told them that they have been taken as a hostage, but that was actually what was the truth. This is what we have done. We created, they said, so how are we going to do this? Now you have convinced me, how are we going to do this? So we created this small process for them. Well, first we convince you with the poster and the pyramids. Then we identify your level 1 to 4 because we need to have some idea of how many processes this is so we can make a plan. So that's the number 2. Then we did the plan. And then we actually just started up inviting people in for workshops and creating the documentation, doing some quality assurance. We invited in just a few process experts from the business, and then maybe taking 1 or 2 buyers. And then once we did have done the documentation of all of our vendor management processes or supplier management processes, then we actually showed it to all of our buyers and said, so can you recognize this? So that was the quality assurance we did of our documentation. So that was part of the review and sign-off, and then we wrote it out and gave them the training to our process portal and all that stuff, how to use it. And then, of course, there is a major governance. And at some point in time, somebody raised their hand to one of our executive management guys saying, but do you know that if we have to do all this process documentation, and it's not going to be a one-off and then it really gets not updated, then we also need to maintain it. And totally calm, he said, yes, and we believe it's worth the investment. So governance is really important, and we strive to do our best to at least review all of it once a year. But with a continuous improvement program coming up and all that stuff, in a year or 2, it will not be a problem. I think I'm running out of time now. This is just to show, this is our simple version of the leading practice, also simple version, but we didn't know it when we started out. So the process life cycle that has a few more phases in the leading practice is our define, implement, measure, and prove. And I'm often being asked, so documentation and then what? And I say, but yes, documentation might just be the first step on your journey. But what you actually need to do is you need to start out defining your processes. That is what we have done in the process documentation project. After you have defined your ways of working, then you need to make sure that people are trained according to these ways of working. That's the implement part. That is also where we see all these big opportunities when we have IT system implementation or functionality. That, oh, I didn't know that that was a standard report in SAP. This is where we need to put extra focus. We really need to make sure that we get things implemented. Once we know that people know how to work, we can start measuring. So is the process good or bad? What is the process adherence? Do they actually comply to the process? Do they follow the process? That we can measure. If they do not comply, then we can start saying, okay, maybe we need to look into implement again. If it's a bad process performance, then we say, okay, we need to change something in the process. So we will move into the improve thing. Once we have improved something in the process, we need to make sure that our standard is updated, that our way of working has been updated. And again, we need to make sure that everybody knows this new way of working. So we move into the implement, and then actually the wheel keeps turning. But in a busy organization where everybody, you know, have a lot of tasks to do, who takes care that this circle keeps running over and over and over again, so we become better and better and better?
Yep.
Nobody, probably. So that is why we have the little process owner in the middle. So, you know, when I'm being asked, so how does this link to continuous improvement? Well, running this really is really the core of continuous improvement. Who secures it? The process owner. What is the main responsibility of a process owner? What are your definition of a process owner? I'm often being asked. I always draw up, define, implement, measure, improve. In my team, we can spell it even before we get up in the morning, you know. So define, implement, measure, improve, we tell everywhere. Yeah, this is the more advanced one, linking to a lot of other stuff from the leading practice. Unfortunately, we didn't know of it when we started out. Now we can see that we are doing a lot of this stuff, and now we can also see, so what would be nice to continue or to start off doing. So what have our learnings been? Top management support, key to this. Process mapping experts, key to this. Communication material, way of communicating to the business so it becomes tangible, easy to understand, kind of, key to this. The user friendliness of the tool is actually also pretty key because documentation isn't that sexy. One set of global conventions. We can link all processes together across the company because everywhere in the company, processes are documented the same way, independently of business unit or area or whatever. So we can really create true end-to-end processes. And then I would say, last but not least, persistence, persistence, and persistence. You need to put somebody in front of this train that have some kind of drive and believe in it, because you need to find all those doors that really aren't open and still get in and talk process documentation and condense and all that. It's more than just the selling. It's really convince instead of selling something to people. So I think that's the learning. Yeah, just a few words on so what are the big benefits. I can tell you a couple of months ago, I was invited. We are opening up. We are building a brand new factory in China, and one of the good guys that have been part of the process documentation project here, he had tried to tell China Manufacturing Project something about process documentation, and they really didn't get it. So he said, couldn't you come and tell us, you know, I think you coming from the outside instead of me being part of the project team, maybe it would be better. And I came and I told them all about, and they were also, yeah, and then somebody said, so what you are saying, I showed them our manufacturing processes and all the work instructions that we have linked to our processes. So they said, so what you are actually telling me is that I'm responsible for the packing area, to getting that up and running. Is that I can actually see how our packing processes is, and all the work instructions to all the machines I'm going to install in this new production facility? Yes, I said, okay, that was easy, you know. He had this, how on earth am I going to train all these new people in China having nothing? And I said, but we have all of it. Okay, and then the guy from molding raised his hand and said, so do you also have something from molding? Yes, we have. And the facility guy said, so do we also have, I'm going to install a small facility function out there. Do we also have? Yes. Check. So the big benefit of this is that, you know, when we open up new sales offices, new and retail stores, even production facilities, you just pick and choose what is relevant for exactly this facility, and then you're running. So it's used for new finance people, new order managers, new customer service, opening up key account management out in our new sales regions or sales offices, and they're being trained according to our process documentation. Process documentation not being the only thing they are being trained in, but the operational side, they use all the process documentation. Huge, huge benefit. We are strong in just plug and play IT solution in all these areas. We just have cookbooks for all of it. So if we also have, you know, kind of cookbooks on the training part for the business, then it's really strong. So I'm out of time, long time ago. Thank you.
Okay. And we're going to take questions. Just the question that we always get asked, and you provided a whole set of learnings. The basic question is, how do we get started? What advice would you have for an organization getting started?
I would get these basics in place, getting some management commitment. And when they do commit to it, use it. You know, we just started up when they said we are there and we support it all the way. Then I said to our CFO, so will you write in our first newsletter where you actually state all your support? Yes, I'd be happy to. And then after the CFO, I just took, you know, our supply chain executive and the administration area, our business enabling area, and da, 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 da. So all of them have now been in our, and after that I took the next layer in the organization and actually used them in our newsletters. And so what are your experience? Of course, along the way, we actually started creating some results and showed people that this can actually make sense and be used for something. So we put that in. So we created newsletters, and I just send it out to all leaders in Lego, so they happen to know what is happening. So get some management commitment in place and use it. Not only get it and saying what they are saying, but they really don't support it. But they don't know how to support it on a daily basis. So you need to tell them how they can support you.
That's a great point. In achieving that commitment or sponsorship for management, that in itself is tricky. And something that I've seen is very often there's the path of least resistance where you're going to the friendliest space, which may not be the right sponsorship you need to sustain it. How did you know that I guess perhaps, how did you get that initial commitment, and how did you know it was the right commitment?
Partly our CFO saying, this is a no-brainer. We need to have documentation in place, him coming from the German company. That was one part. The other part was that, you know, we struggled with this during all of 2009 and commitment and da-da-da-da-da, and I was asked to come in and give a status. And at the end in March, I said to them, well, guys, if you don't want to do this, I won't spend my life doing it. And then they said, okay, we'll support you all the way. We actually do believe in it, but you need to tell us how to do it. So, you know, so sometimes seek that top management commitment And it's okay to be a bit, maybe not provocative, but be crisp that you can't fix something for them if they really don't support it, because this is something that needs top management commitment. It's not easy. It's not something the business voluntarily come to you and say, by the way, shouldn't we document our processes? That will not happen in the beginning.
I like your circle with the process owner in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me though, because you're a worldwide company, you must have process owners that do the same processes, right?
Yes.
Are they linked somehow, and how do you link them? Is there some way that they share information so that when they make improvements, say in the US, that improvement also goes to other process owners?
Thank you. That was the only slide I skipped. Yes, we actually we work with process owners, and here we call it, here I don't know why, here it says leadership team and excellence team. Today have process owners and we have process core teams. So we have we strive at having a global process owner, and then we create a process core team to support that. And in the process core team, we actually try to have representative from different relevant sites. So in our manufacturing area, they have what they call lead factory. So one factory could be our Hungarian factory, being lead in molding.
Like excellence, center of excellence.
Kind of, yes. So they split it, you know, so they say you are the global process owner, and then you have a small team supporting you with representative from the other locations. So that's the way we work with it. In IT, we have an extra layer, actually. We have the process owner and the process core team, because we have IT at the different locations across the globe. And then above the process owner, we have what we call an excellence team. And the responsibility of the excellence team is to secure end-to-end process. And the process core team responsibility is to try to optimize, but to make sure, you know, just part of the process. It could be the change process, the incident process, the release management process, the problem process. Those are then linked into one excellence team where they say, okay, we are supported by the same IT tool and da-da-da-da-da. So in here, we will secure that what you do in the change process core team doesn't create any problems for any of the other areas.
Is that wiki link? A wiki kind of link?
No.
For their channels? No?
No.
I'm going to move up. If you have a question, we're going to.
Thank you. I'm just interested to know what you would see the core differentiating competencies of Lego. Is it the brand experience? Is it the product? Is it the designs which sit above the blocks? What would you see would be the differentiating pieces?
Maybe all of it that you just mentioned. But I actually think that this is us being at our first training here. I actually have put down to my nose that this is good. We have now a lot of processes in our process portal, and we just say, you know, standardize and optimize and all that. But maybe we should differentiate in depending on whether it's non-core or core competitive or whatever. So I think that is one of the learnings I have taken away from these days, is that when I go back, I need to find a way to introduce this to the business, that we actually need to differentiate in our way of looking at our processes also. We have the core management support split already, but we don't have the other dimensions. So that's still out there for us to do.
You can raise your hand if you have questions. I think we have time for just a couple more. We have one over there. Maybe I'll ask a quick one before I make the journey over there. One of the more visible innovations for Lego was its use of crowdsourcing or co-invention, where it exposed the design process to customers.
You think why we have grown so much, or?
Well, so that use of getting customer input into the design process is a great hallmark and innovation of Lego. Did that factor into any of the process recognitions?
I actually don't know, I have to say. Okay. I actually don't know.
Yeah, I have a question about like how much are you tracking, to what extent people are using the process documentation, and for what purposes? Like, because you have an RS repository, I assume, so, you know, who is accessing what they are doing with it, how much impact it's having. You kind of track that systematically and how.
Yes, the way we track it is actually threefold, I would say. We have what we call a process portal user statistics. So we get the number of hits on all of our models to see how it develops. That is one thing. Then we have 2 surveys. That is the 2 other things. We have something that is targeted the end user, where we actually ask a set of questions in, you know, how is it, how user-friendly is it, can you read it, do you use it, for what purpose do you use it, do you use it for continuous improvement purposes, do you use it for training purposes, these different things. So that is targeted the end user, the normal process worker in the company. And then we have another survey targeted the process owners. So do you feel equipped? Do you use it? Do you use process documentation linked to continuous improvement? Do you have process performance indicators linked to your processes? That kind of questions we have in there. So that is the 3 things. The process worker we will run twice a year. The user statistics we can get anytime. That's real time. And then the process owner survey we run once a year to get these kind of indications. Are we on the right track right now?
Annette, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a break for lunch until 1 o'clock. We'll be back here at 1 o'clock. To our BPM.com audience that's online, we'll be back online at 1 o'clock as well.
Mike, ask her if she wants to stop it. You want to stop it?